Welcome to all of you for this lecture of Guy Coles. I will shortly introduce him later, but first I want you to handle the manual for today because it has a certain kind of structure. First, Guy will have his lecture that will take about 20 minutes. And I know that a lot of you already saw the book, read the book, parts of the book, prepared the book, and that you have a lot of questions. Please don't forget, later on, after the lecture, you can ask all the questions you want to ask him. When he's finishing his lecture, about after 20 minutes, we will have a little short break, but you stay here. And I will explain then what you're going to do. After that, there is a Q&A between you and he, but also between, and we have a lady here sitting with a computer, Ulrika. She is catching all the questions that are coming from the streaming, because the people who are watching can chat and ask questions too. So there will be a dialogue between you and Guy, hopefully. Really ask questions, very important, but also from the people who are watching on the stream. Again, hello, there we are. It's always a pleasure to meet him. It's always a pleasure to talk to him. And it's always a pleasure for me to listen to him, because he has to say a lot. He has a wide experience. Guy Coles, he's from Belgium, like me, and that's always very nice. But he's from Antwerp, and that's something different. They say the people from Antwerp are the Dutch from Belgium. So that's a thing there. Guy is a dramaturg. He studied in Antwerp, in Ghent, and Antwerp. And there's a famous place in Ghent, it's called the Vooruit. It's a place where artists meet, but also a performance element. And he was there an artistic director and a curator. And there, in fact, his career started a bit to going into the arts much more, and later on to become a dramaturg who worked with very interesting choreographers like Akram Khan, like Sidi Larbi, and many others that you can refer to in the book. This week he had already a week here in Tilburg in the International Choreography Week, and it's a pleasure, and really a pleasure to see him again here and to listen to him and what he probably will talk to you. A warm applause for Guy Coles.
Thank you, Dirk, for this nice introduction. Thank you, Fontys, for the invitation on the occasion of my new book, which I think some of you have read parts about. It's called Imaginative Bodies, Dialogues in Performance Practices. And actually the book was also produced with support from Fontys next to the Eastman Company, Akram Khan Company, Concertgebouw Bruges and Sadler's Wells in London. As Dirk said, I will try to keep a short introduction, 20-25 minutes, and then make it as much as possible interactive so that I can answer your questions. For the introduction, I'm going to talk about the book, but I also want to make the link between the book and the Erasmus Plus project that Fontys initiated, Inclusive Dance, the transferable skill of the dance artist. I was also here in Fontys for a number of years as an associate lecturer, and I had the pleasure to initiate this project together with Ruud at the time, and then other people developed it further. And there's a very strong connection to the book and this project, which I would like to talk a little bit about. My main work, I call myself today a dance dramaturg, and what I mainly do is to accompany choreographers in their creative process. And the way I do it, I always define myself, I have three roles. The first role is that of being a witness, just being there and see how they work, already supports them. The second role, and that's the most important one, and that's also the one I will focus on today, is that of being a dialogue partner, to really have somebody to talk to at every stage of the creative process, from the very first idea until after the premiere, how it is received and how they will deal with that. And then I also often help them to edit the work, but then I compare myself to that of a film editor, that it's their work, it's their film, their aesthetic, their content, but I give them tools to help them to organize and edit the work as best as possible. As I said, today I will focus on this second role, that of being a dialogue partner. And again, the subtitle of the book says it, Dialogues in Performance Practices. For me, the older I get, the more important this very simple notion of having a dialogue becomes important. And it's the essence, I think, of any creative process. For instance, if you think about interdisciplinarity, I mean, it was one of the questions I already received in advance. For me, real interdisciplinarity is how artists between different disciplines dialogue with each other, and how an artist develops his own discipline and his own... When I get enthusiastic, then I use my hands a lot, and so I have to be careful of that. Now I know that. So real interdisciplinarity, are we good with the sound? Okay. So real interdisciplinarity is really this dialogue between artists from different disciplines, and how you use the way of thinking, the methodologies, the tools, the creative process of another discipline, and then creatively translate it to your own discipline. And I think that's the best way also to develop a discipline. Again, dialogue as part of a creative process. Another person that has inspired me a lot is Miranda Tufnell. Miranda Tufnell is one of the key figures in British dance improvisation. She wrote 2 amazing books that some of you might know. One is called Body, Space and Image, and the other one is called A Winding Field. And in the second book, A Winding Field, she describes actually dance improvisation through a dialogue or a conversation. She says, like, creating becomes a conversation when we enter a dialogue with whatever we are doing. In this conversing, we are drawn along in the moment-by-moment flow of sensation, interchange and choice, rather than following a predetermined intention or idea. Conversations grow as we listen and explore a constantly shifting process of discovery that changes in momentum, rhythm, clarity, or chaos as we work. So for Miranda, the basis of the creative process is a dialogue. And a dialogue is so important because it is an open process where people talk to each other, but also listen to each other, and where they don't define in advance the outcome, but both meet, if it goes well, somewhere in between, in an unknown place for both, and so something new for both. So that's what I do with the artists I work as a dramaturg. We constantly have this dialogue at every stage, and by just having the dialogue, also we discover and we clarify our own, what they actually want to make. The book was a series of dialogues that I had between 2008 and 2013 on invitation of Sadler's Wells in London. And they wanted to have this dialogue public in front of an audience. So one thing I decided to do is only to invite artists that I already knew well, that I had a friendship with, that I had collaborated with, because I wanted the dialogue to be as intimate as possible. And then we both prepared it over a longer period by sometimes writing letters, sometimes visiting each other. And then eventually the dialogue was in front of an audience, like you are. And it was not about one particular work, it was about their whole career and their vision on the body in their work. So each dialogue was also framed in a more specific way. Unfortunately, of these original dialogues, I don't have any recordings. There were only audio recordings, which were used for the book, but they were not videoed. But I give you a short fragment of a similar dialogue that I had with Akram Khan. I worked for 4 or 5 years as Akram as a dramaturg, and since then we have had a lot of public dialogues. This dialogue was taken in Bruges as part of the festival December Dance in Bruges. And Akram talks mainly about Desh, which was the solo work that he created around his work in Bangladesh. Just to have a little snapshot of how the dialogues in the book were created like that. We'll mainly talk about the creation process of Desh, but a couple of introductory questions. You're very generous with your time here in Bruges. You just finished an audition 20 minutes ago, yeah. So that's already for the next production. Project, what is the next project?
Yeah, it's for the Olympics.
Maybe you should.
Oh.
So I'm not the only one who has problems with it.
It's for the Olympics. We're doing the opening ceremony. So we're looking for a large number of dancers, 49. So it's very specific. It's actually very technical. It's not looking for the company as such, because in the company you look for characters, but it's just really technical dancers.
Okay. The first part of the program this afternoon, we showed two documentaries by Gilles Delmas. One of the making of 0 degrees, the other one of Bahok. He's also making one on the process of Dash, which unfortunately wasn't finished in time to be shown here. Why is it so important for you to document the work or the working process and also share that with the audience?
I don't know. He just proposes.
Okay.
Gilles is persistent, a wonderfully persistent human being. He keeps on saying, I want to make a documentary. Okay. Somebody else making a documentary. Larbi and I were like, okay, so he made a really nice documentary. I think that was his best. For out of all those, I think 0 degrees was really special. And it's nice to look back at the documentary of the process, not so much at the work. Because you get critical. I'm sure Larbi is critical when we see each other, ourselves, and it's a bit painful, but the process is very interesting.
The process of Dash started, I mean, as amongst others, by taking everybody, the whole team, to Bangladesh. And the film that Jill will make about it also document that aspect. Why was it so important for you to not only to go back there yourself, but to take your whole team with you there?
I think, I mean, a lot of the groundwork was done by Kartika. The whole process started with Kartika, actually. The whole conversation about Desh, and she's menacingly quick. So suddenly we had loads of information that would take somebody a year to compile. She did it in a few weeks, and we were discussing, and a lot of things came up. But one of the things that we found was that all of us decided that we should go to Bangladesh to smell, to feel, to get a sense of the atmosphere, to meet the people. And Kartika can explain better too, because she was there as well. And I think it allowed us to take a lot away from Bangladesh. Memory, sensory memory, experiences that we had. One particular experience that I had was, filming on my iPhone. A lot of us filming little kids, street kids, and most evenings we would come back and say, "Oh, this is not good," we're just like tourists filming them in the face and really close up. And how do they feel about it? But then the next day, I'd be tempted to take out my phone again. And it just kept on happening. And then I think on the third or fourth day in Khulna, there was a little boy that looked into the camera very, very clearly. And I thought he was looking through the camera through me. And he was wearing torn shorts. I think he had sandals and stuff. And he just kind of arrived at me, and I put the phone away. And I said, "Sorry." He smiled, pulled out his phone, and started filming me. That was it.
So just to give you a very short fragment of how these dialogues in the book were created. And as you see, like Akram, he's a really good storyteller. Like a Kathak dancer, for him is also, the origin of Kathak is also a storytelling. And also today, I started, I think my first medium is writing, but today I prefer to write in this dialogue form. So the book is basically these kind of talks that happened before a public. They were just recorded, and then we had to change very little. We just had to clean up the language a little bit and edit them. But the talks in the book are exactly like the talks were held originally. I make the link now between this importance dialogue as an artistic practice, but also dialogue in society is getting more and more important. This is a also very inspirational person, Richard Sennett. He's a sociologist who writes a lot about contemporary issues. And one of Sennett's main ideas is that a lot of the problems in society today have to do with the fact that we have lost our basic skills as human beings. In one of his first books, which is called The Craftsman, he talks about the skill of actually making things. I think a lot of problems in today's society, we have outsourced everything, and we can't make anything ourselves anymore. We can't, if something happens at home, you're unable to repair it, we need some specialists to do that. In his more recent book, which is called Together, The Rituals, Pleasures, and Politics of Cooperation, he's talking about the skill of collaborating. And again, he did field research in Wall Street and in Silicon Valley, and you see that people are in the working place are not really actually able to work together anymore. And then Sennett, who himself was also a professional musician, I mean, is a professional musician before he went into sociology, says that the arts is one of the few fields where we still learn these basic skills. The skill to make things and also the skill to collaborate, especially in the performing arts, where it's music, theater, or dance, like that. So then the skill that we learn about collaborating in the studio, in the rehearsal room, through dialogue, also becomes a transferable skill that we can apply in different places. Again, this is so this notion of transferable skills, that the skills that we have as artists become more and more important for other parts of society. So this is a little quote from the book, but referring to Sennett. Cooperation requires listening, and only by doing so are we able to weave the complexities, whether of society, of life, in the city, of a group gathering, or a choreography. Sennett himself also had a career as a professional musician, sees the professional performing arts as a particularly well-suited laboratory for retraining our dialogical skills. So collaborating through dialogue. And this is the end of my talk, and I will open it up. The last example I want to give of an artist who's been very working with dialogue in a very good way is Dana Caspersen. Those who don't know her, Dana Caspersen has been the lifelong partner of William Forsythe. So she was the iconic short blonde American dancer in his work. She was in the company for almost 30 years, but she's also his life partner. So she's been very influential in the development of his work, not only as a performer, but also bringing major ideas to his work. And while Dana was working still with the Forsythe Company in Frankfurt, she also started to do an MA in conflict management in the States. And since then, she's been bridging these two worlds, the world of the arts, of dance, and the world of conflict management. And she's in the book, she's one of the people I interviewed in the book, but she's also one of the people that I interviewed for the website Inclusive Dance and the transferable skills that Fontys is developing. So I'll show you two short video fragments. The first one is from a talk, into the beginning of a talk where Dana is talking how, for her as a choreographer, how she can bring her skills from choreography into this very different world of conflict management. And then the second video clip is an artistic project that she still created with the Forsythe Company, which is called Not on Not. And in this project, she uses dialogue as an artistic tool to dialogue with the audience around contemporary topics like that. So this is her just introducing herself and how she's working with...
Okay, so after 35 years of working as a performer and a creator, 10 years of working in conflict, and a few years of bringing these fields together to create large-scale events that use choreographic thinking to enable discussion, to expand discussion and exchange around complicated societal issues, here's what I'm noticing. Conflict is inevitable. Okay, it's going to happen, and thank God. Because conflict is the place that we can find out what matters, and where we can start to understand why it's happening. So we have to be able to differentiate, though, if we're going to understand why this is important. Because destructive conflict is not inevitable. So these are two different things. Conflict is this rich place where what we care about, what matters, what is possible, is moving around in this complex mixture of dynamic. Destructive conflict is stuck energy. And this is what I see. Conflict is the origin of all creative action. And when we recognize the difference between conflict and destructive conflict, then we can start to notice that every time something new needs to emerge, it emerges from this place of dynamic tension that is a place of possibility. So what we pay attention to, what we look for, determines what we can see. There's no neutral space. There's no neutral situation. Every situation, every space we step into is formed. It's formed from the inside, from the way we think. It's formed from the outside by systems and patterns and beliefs. And a lot of these, the way it's formed, comes from the way that people decide to organize ideas physically. So it's choreographic. I think of conflict, choreography, communication in terms of action, because I find that's the best way for us to see what's happening and to decide if we want to do something different. So what are we choosing to pay attention to? Which actions?
So again, she's talking to a group of conflict managers, and she says, like, I mean, I bring you my knowledge from choreography. That's what I'm talking about. And then she's doing the opposite thing as well. She brings her knowledge from conflict management and creates artistic projects. And not this project that the Foresight company created, that she created with the Foresight company, and which she calls also choreographic public dialogues. This is a...
Also ich habe schon außerhalb meines Geburtslands gelebt. Ich habe außerhalb meines Geburtslands gelebt. Das war ja, genau, okay. Ich fühle mich zu Hause in meinem Geburtsland.
So this is a project that brings people together and sets them in motion in a way that helps to explain to other people what it is that they have experienced and what they believe around issues that come up around the topic of immigration.
I propose to make it in Wedding, here in this, it's an inner city district which has a lot of immigrants living here, and to compare it with the same event in Hellersdorf, which is supposed to be a district which has very few immigrants. In fact, it turned out that in Hellersdorf also a lot of immigrants are living. Eberswalde is a small city close to Berlin, where we made it in the Brandenburgische Viertel, which is a district that was actually built for immigrants. Smartanaut has these three parts. The first one is the moving and taking position, following 3 different answer possibilities on 25 different questions, all around living together, immigration and common values.
set up a situation where they take actual positions so that you can see the relationship of your belief through the physical stance that you choose. So this project creates models in different formats that sets people in motion, that helps to make visible what people's beliefs are and what their experiences are and what the motion in their life is. So immigration, as if you look at it from a choreographic perspective, meaning what are the conditions that are in place that are tending to make certain things happen or preventing certain things? What are the forces that are in place in people's lives?
So let's stop here. So this was actually the short introduction I wanted to give, like the importance of dialogue in a creative practice, the importance of dialogue for society, which is a skill that we learn because in order to collaborate in the studio, you have to dialogue, and then bringing it back, like in this project about migration, the dialogue, make the dialogue as an artistic project, which is happening more and more. It was one of the themes that this week came in the International Choreographers Week. We also had somebody like Lotte van den Berg, who's I think a very important, successful Dutch theater director, who also does the same thing like Dana, that is create projects, theater projects, in which the dialogue that the audience has with each other is the main issue. I'd like to round up here, and then we can give it back to Dirk and open it up to you and be more specific about other topics in the book like that.